Today's manhwa begins with the fact that we hear a voice from the building that addresses Shumo, saying that he wants to stage a coup, so why doesn't he admit it right away? There are many people inside this building. Along the red carpet, someone brought a man who is now shackled. People are all around watching these events and, apparently, an execution is about to take place. We are shown this very man. He is all beaten and wounded and is in shackles, and on his neck there is a block that limits his movements. It is clear that he has lost hope and thinks that this is the end. The man in the block is our main character named Shumo. Looking at the girl who approached him, he assumes that it was she who poisoned him by adding it to yesterday's glass of wine. The girl stands proudly in front of him and considers it obvious that the minister was impeached because of his achievements. So, in her opinion, there is nothing to be surprised at all. The woman with the big cores is already taking out her katana, remembering how the guy had good feelings for her, so she lets him know that today she is going to reward him personally.
It turned out that she took out a blade called Zhuo Shui. The same blade was previously given to her by the main character. He could not even think that one day this blade would be pointed at him from her hands.
Judging by the expression on the red-haired girl's face, these words hurt her a little, and it even seems that she herself began to remember how she used to spend a good time with Shumo. She plunged into her memories when she was still very little, and the main character, who at that time was more like a mother, put her to bed showing love and care. She also remembered the moment when some bad people attacked the two of them. She was scared, and Shumo, like a real brave Sigma, stood up for her, asking her not to worry and to leave here. The red-haired girl, remembering how a large crowd of people were watching them, decided that now was not the time to show any emotions, so, considering the guy pathetic, she decided to finish what she started. She is already about to strike and asked him not to worry about his body, because it will be buried in the Imperial Massif and donations will be made in honor of his name. You can see how he struck a helpless guy with his katana. She didn't even show mercy and just did it in cold blood. Everything around was filled with his blood, and of course everything will end badly. The spectators around, who continued to watch the development of events, paying attention to this terrible scene, experienced some disgust and began to turn away. The main character, having received a mortal wound, begins to lie on the ground and bleed. He understands that this is the end, and it's time to activate the revival manuscript. Next, you can see how the main character was reborn, and apparently he returned to the past. Blue butterflies are flying around, and he himself is shocked that it worked. After his rebirth, Shumo begins to look around, trying to understand where exactly he ended up. At the moment, he is in some small room and sitting on some bench. While the black-haired man was looking around this room, he apparently remembered the horrors that happened to him quite recently in a large building. He still does not believe that he managed to escape in this way. Once in the body of the villain prince from the novel, the guy did a lot of work to save his character. He carefully raised the heroine Liu Ruo Shui so that she could become an empress and take care of all the problems. Having started raising this girl, the main character thought that he was doing his job perfectly and expected that a fatal fate had been avoided, but in the end they got rid of him. But now Shumo is very determined. Having analyzed everything and experienced this failure himself, he is definitely not going to repeat his old mistakes so as not to become a victim of this empress again. Next, we see how some old man with a bun on his head pulls back the curtain. He turns to Shumo and asks if he has any wishes while they are on their way. You might think that Shumo's only desire is to play Valorant, but at this time it doesn't exist yet, so he simply asks how long they have to go and finds out that there is about half an hour left. Black-haired understands that right now they are going to an orphanage, and this is the place where he first met Ruo Shui, which means it's time to start acting without repeating past mistakes. Next, the main character noticed how the old stump continued to look at him and expected something, so he simply told him to continue driving. The black-haired man understood him perfectly. You can see how one of the butterflies that flew to Shumo somehow broke into pieces, and the main character understands that Liu Ruxue is still an orphan, and he does not intend to raise her in this life. The events move to an orphanage. You can see chaos all around. In this building, there are also many thin children who seem to be smiling, but at the same time, they are waiting for someone to shelter them. In this crowd of children, we can also see Liu Ruoxue. She moved away from everyone and begins to look herself up and down. She realizes with horror that she has gone back in time and is now a child. Next, we see how this red-haired girl, clutching her head with her hands, pretends as if she is trying to remember something, and apparently, she will be able to do it. We see some kind of palace. There is a tense atmosphere all around. Various children are running and playing around this palace, and on the palace itself, there is also a sick building. Events seem to return to the present time, where this girl is again the Empress. She is now sitting on the throne and still holding her head, and her subordinates are next to her. They turn to her and say that the palace is besieged by coalition forces, so for the sake of safety, you need to leave here. Otherwise, everything could end very badly for this red-haired woman. However, Lu Ruoxue makes it clear to these chained dogs that she is not going to go anywhere right now. Even though her life is in danger, she says that she is waiting for someone. Then suddenly, while the Empress was communicating with her servants, a hole appeared in the ceiling of their huge building from which an unknown person jumped into the building. It turned out that this is a witch, who of course poses a threat to the life of Lu Ruoxue. The red-haired subordinate armed herself and is going to protect her, asking the Empress to leave. You can see how the white-haired witch begins to smile slyly and sarcastically, calls these two guys very devoted. From the smile of this witch, you can understand that he is going to do something. Without allowing these two losers to come to their senses and understand what was actually going on here, the girl rushed towards them in one sharp movement and beheaded these two without any problems. You can see how there are drops of blood left on her face from them. She is glad that no one else is blocking her path. So now she's going to come up with Ruoxue because she has not seen her for a long time. Empress Lu Ruoxue continues to sit on her throne, and noticing how the heads of her subordinates were cut off with just one sharp movement, she was not even afraid and looked at this witch. We can notice this same white-haired witch, but already in full growth, she just stands and bloodthirstily looks at the Empress, letting her know that she has some plans. The witch approaches her and begins to talk about how the red-haired woman lived a wonderful life after she was sheltered, while the white-haired woman herself, meanwhile, experienced horrors and fought off mongrels for a piece of bread. Getting close enough to her, she touches Lu Ruoxue's chin and tells her that in the end she's still lost and gives her a chance to guess why this is so. It can be seen that the Empress is not very pleased with the touches of this witch. She, trying to move her hand away, does not even try to guess why she lost and decides to simply ask directly. Approaching even closer, the white-haired girl begins to whisper directly into the Empress's ear that she lost because she finished off Shumo. The red-haired girl realizes that she made a mistake. Taking out her katana, the girl says that it was impossible to reach the red-haired one while she was protected by her dear master. The Empress realizes that a bad time will come for her now. Frightened, the red-haired woman began to stutter, still continuing to sit on her throne. She listened to the witch and, continuing to look at her, realized what a mistake she had made. Without allowing this fool to even finish, suddenly the witch strikes her with a katana right in her chest, just like the Empress once hit Shumo, from which she is simply in shock. After the blow, the girl says that Lu Ruoxue, being intoxicated with power, took the guy's life without regret. How can such a stupid girl be called an Empress? Having started to bleed and still continuing to bleed on her beloved throne, one can understand that she is dying from a mortal wound, but also realizes that she is to blame for everything. Continuing to hold on to the wound, the red-haired woman suddenly decided to remember Shumo, precisely at the moment when she really needed it. She wants to turn back time and fix everything. In the next chapter, we see a scene where Lu Ruoxue has already found herself in the past. She is in a panic with her head and does not understand how this is possible. A thin child from behind is trying to calm her down. The evil girl only pushes his hand away and says that everything is fine. The boy is of course happy about this and advises her to change into a clean outfit, because soon a noble gentleman will come to pick up one of them. Hearing from the boy about some noble gentleman, the girl was very surprised. He understands that it's more likely that he's going to choose one of them and keep it for himself. We see the main character heading towards the orphanage. Lu Ruoxue was convinced that it was he who came here in a past life and took her, so she is waiting for him now. The red-haired girl, realizing this, begins to be very happy, because this means that she has a chance to meet him again. She, like him, hopes not to make her past mistakes. Then her thoughts are interrupted by some black-haired guy who shouts to all the children that as soon as they change their clothes, they should gather in the front yard so that they can be chosen. Next, the events are transferred to the front yard. All the joyful children gathered right there, having changed clothes in advance and waiting for the noble gentleman to come and choose one of them. Meanwhile, this whole picture is being watched by a white-haired girl who is surprised by something. The same black-haired man approaches her to find out what she is doing here. Approaching her, he begins to scold this girl, who by the way is called Chia Yan. He asks her not to scare everyone with her appearance and to go to the backyard as soon as possible, because that's where she belongs. His scream made her feel very offended, and she begins to ask him to let her stay in the corner. She will try not to embarrass the gentleman nobly, and everything will go well. She makes a cute face and looks at the black-haired, strict man and asks to let her in because she wants to see Shumo live at least once in her life, because it's so cool for her. You can see that everyone let her in. She still sits in the corner, and the children in the middle attract the main attention. Shumo approached them, and the black-haired man begins to show him the children. The white-haired and red-haired ones immediately turned their attention to him. The guy himself looks very serious, and the man next to him, having already shown all the children, asks him to go inside and choose someone. The young guy turned his attention to Liu Ruoshui, but in this life their destinies will diverge. He is not going to choose her, because he does not want to be stabbed with a katana again. Meanwhile, Liu Ruoshu stands proudly right in front of the noble master and convinces him that this is really Shu Mo and is sure that he is going to choose her. Next, a man in a brown uniform addressing the main character says that they tested the endurance of all the children in their orphanage so that he can choose only high-quality material. He smiles at the guy with satisfaction and says that the results of these children are significantly superior to ordinary people, so they are stronger and better than them. So if he chooses one of them, he will not regret it. They can suit the main character both as slaves and future warriors. There are a lot of good options here. The children, meanwhile, are at a loss. Apparently, they do not agree to be slaves. Then the black-haired man, eager for a lot of money from him to buy skins in the League of Legends, whispers to Shu Mo that there is one girl here whose bones are of high quality. Next, the black-haired man decides to show the main character who exactly this girl is. He points his finger at the already familiar Liu Ruoshui and advises the guy to take her. Shu Mo looks at her with a very angry look, because seeing her, she remembers the execution that she carried out on him in a past life when she pierced him in cold blood with a katana. A man with a bun on his head decides to further talk about the most important thing for him, namely the price because of the qualities of this girl. She costs much more than other children. The man grinningly waits for payment. The serious, rich protagonist tells this merchant that he doesn't care about the price at all. The man was very surprised, because such a client is a real pleasure for him. Next, Shu Mo drew attention to a white, unremarkable white-haired girl sitting in the corner. Noticing her, he felt a familiar feeling and was trying to remember who she was. The main character tries to clarify with the man what about this girl and asks him to tell him more about her and is already thinking about taking her with him instead of Liu Ruoshui. The merchant is unhappy that Shu Mo wants to choose her. Apparently, the price for her is very small. He says that she is the worst of all the children here, and she has very weak bones. Then the black-haired freak begins to shout again at the whole palace. He tells the white-haired one to get out of here, because she is embarrassing the master. Chia Yan began to cry in fear. While that freak was shouting at this little girl, the main character was looking at her and trying to remember who she was in his past life, and apparently was able to do it. The guy is already going to take her, but he again wondered how the story would turn out if this time he chooses her. And what if she also decides to finish him off, because anything is possible? We see Chia Yan again. She continues to cry, looking at the floor, after a strict man shouted at her. Then she decides to take everything into her own hands and, raising her head, begins to run towards Shu Mo. Next, you can see how she runs straight up to the main character and hugs him tightly. The black-haired man took notice of this and looks very dissatisfied with the impudence of this girl. She continues to hold tightly to Shu Mo's clothes, asking him to take her with him. She really wants this, apparently because she is being treated poorly in this shelter. The white-haired girl continues to cry, and still wanting to be taken away, she promises to faithfully serve the main character until the end of her days, provided that he takes her with him. The strictly merchant's patience has already run out, and he, noticing that the girl still doesn't want to let go of this gentleman, begins to shout at her again and grabs her by the hair and pulls her away from the guy. Shu Mo listened to this girl, and apparently her words interested him. He also cannot watch how an adult man hurts a little girl and asks him to stop. The black-haired man was very surprised that Shu Mo even began to feel sorry for this girl and asked to let her go, but he listened to him and let him go, causing her to simply fall to the ground. The exhausted Chia Yan, realizing that no one is holding her anymore, quickly gets up from the floor and runs up to Shu Mo again, continuing to cry and begging him to take her away from this damned place as soon as possible. Finally, the guy begins his communication with this girl. He looks at her and asks if she wants to go with him, after which he is going to ask a couple more questions. This question seemed a little strange to the white-haired woman, because for several minutes she had been trying to persuade him to take her with him. But she still lowered her head and answered yes. Shu Mo sits down on one leg and touches her with his hand, trying to calm her down, after which he decides to clarify whether she is ready to serve him faithfully, hoping that she will not fail again. As you can see, she still can't calm down and cries. She tells Shu Mo that if he takes her away from here, she swears that she will carry out any of his instructions. The main character looks happy. He sees in this girl a good and sincere person. Apparently, he will still choose her and raise her with dignity, so that she does not chop everyone with a katana. Meanwhile, Liu Ruoxue is watching this whole picture. She seems to be perplexed that Shumo doesn't even look in her direction, and understands that he is going to take Chia Yan with him. She continues to watch this whole scene in shock and does not understand what is happening, because she expected that the main character would decide to take her away from here. The red-haired girl has already lost all hope. In her opinion, everything should have been different. It is obvious that she still does not know that Shumo also moved into the past and knows about everything. She remembers how in a past life the main character took her from the shelter. She believes that this time he should have taken her. But this time something is wrong. In the next chapter, we see how the red-haired girl is perplexed that Shumo did not take her from the orphanage this time. She does not understand why he chose the white-haired one instead of her. A man drew attention to the girl's condition. He is also at a loss. Looking after the departing main character, he turns to him asking why he decided to take exactly one child. Next, you can see how Shumo and Chia Yan are about to leave this building, but the guy, hearing someone addressing him, suddenly decided to stop. After he stopped, he turns back with a cool look, asking if there is any problem with this because Shumo himself must decide how many children he should take. Wanting to earn more money, this fool says that there are many much more capable children here than Chia Yan. He talks about how Ruoxue is distinguished by his rare talent. Our Sigma, after an incident from a past life, is angry with everything connected with Liu Ruoxue. So turning away with a dissatisfied look, he does not understand how this person dares to tell him what to do. After listening to this gentleman, the black-haired man was slightly frightened, realizing what stupidity he had committed. So starting to look at the floor, he says that he would never dare to do something like that and apologizes. While the man apologized to the main character, the red-haired girl decides to run up to Shumo, call him by his name. Apparently she wants to beg the guy to take her away from here. Meanwhile, Shumo was still trying to leave here, but Liu Ruoxue manages to catch up with him and grabs his clothes and begins to ask him to take them with him. Next, you can see how she is still holding the guy by the clothes. The black-haired man is not happy with the impudence of this girl, and apparently is going to pull her away from the master. The white-haired girl apparently also does not like the behavior of Liu Ruoxue. He begins to hold tightly to Shumo, and hopes that she will not be exchanged for the red-haired one. The black-haired man already considers the red-haired girl's behavior to be some kind of disgrace. He approaches the girl and does not understand where her respect for the master is. Liu Ruoxue does not want to let the guy go. Finally, the merchant reached this abnormal person and grabbing her by the clothes, pulled the girl away from her, so that he finally felt comfortable and she would not bother him. The merchant pushed her aside and told her not to do that again, after which she lost all hope. She realized that the main character was not going to take her, and she felt sad. However, unexpectedly for her, Shumo takes her hand. She looks at him in bewilderment and already thinks that he is going to take her away. The white-haired girl looks a little scared, because she can be replaced. We can again notice a sweet smile on the little girl's face. She has hope again. She hopes that she will live happily with him and will not repeat past mistakes in any way. Our main character turned out to be a real gigachad. He remembers what she did to him in a past life. So taking her hand, he simply pushed her to the ground, which made even Chia Yan surprised. The red-haired woman fell to the ground and continued to lie there. In shock, she did not expect that the gentleman could do this to her, and understands that she was in vain hoping for something good. Shumo looks at her and understands that in a past life, he kept her under his wing for many years, sharing bread and shelter with her. But in the end, it was all in vain, and she treated him very badly. The main character takes the white-haired girl by the hand and already hopes that he will calmly leave this building and no one will interfere with him this time, because he made it clear to everyone that he doesn't need anyone else. The rest of the children, together with Liu Ruoxue, begin to look after the departing people, the red-haired one still continuing to lie on the floor and cannot understand why everything happened differently from the last time. Next, the dissatisfied merchant himself decides to approach Shumo. He says that they forgot to clarify one small detail. It seems the main character understands exactly what he is talking about. The merchant says that if a guy buys only one Chia Yan, then the price for it is 2,000 low-quality spiritual stones, or 200 of average quality, and is already waiting for payment. You can see how Shumo simply smiles. He turns to this black-haired man and realizes what exactly he wants for this girl, as if the guy expected to hear something like that from him. Dissatisfied, Shumo thinks that this swindler decided to overcharge and blackmail him. The man turns on the fool and tells the guy that he doesn't understand what he's talking about. The main character became interested in what would happen if he decided to refuse to pay. The merchant plucked up courage and said that in this case, they were not going to let him go so easily. Then the merchant realizes that there is no point in stalling for time and decides to set two ninjas with swords on Shumo. They are already behind the main character and look as if they are about to strike. Shumo turned his attention to one of these bad guys' swords. Even though he is in danger now, he remains completely calm because he always has a plan and can get rid of them. Unexpectedly for the losers in black uniform, some old man appears behind them who, without showing any emotion, simply pierces their chests with his bare hands. The tough man pulled his hands out of these bad guys and, shaking the blood from them, watched as these losers fell to the ground dead and could not do anything to him. The merchant also turned his attention to the cool reception from this serious man. He thought that it would be a good idea to set even more ninjas on him, so that's exactly what he did. Because if they don't finish them off now, then they are corpses. Next, the black-haired fool begins to run away from the scene of these cruel events. He hopes that he himself will be safe, and his warriors themselves will cope with the main character and that crazy grandfather. The main character addresses his friend by name, and it turns out that his name is Mr. Wang, Shumo. Being confident that he will cope with the villains, leaves him here, and he is going to go to another place. You can see how the strongman Mr. Wang, instead of simply defending himself, attacks these ninjas. These guys are shocked by this turn of events and no longer know what to do. You can understand that the old man kicked their ass. Then the events are transferred again to this merchant. He is already lying helplessly on the ground, and just to spare someone, apparently Shumo caught up with him and decided to show who is in charge here. The main character, together with Chia Yan, stand in front of this weakling. The man promises to give Shumo all the spiritual stones and treasures that he has, so that this strong man does not finish him off. Suddenly, the scammer begins to get angry. He looks at the ground so that his nasty face will not be noticed, and thinks that since the guy is very attached to this girl, it will be a good idea to take her hostage. He abruptly gets to his feet and stretches his hand forward, while he screams and heads towards the little girl. This self-confident fool thinks that he will succeed. It can be seen how his hand is already very close to the white-haired one. She noticed this and begins to scream, trying to hide behind the main character, in the hope that he will save her. Suddenly, we see a bunch of blood and a hand that is falling to the ground right now. Apparently, this hand previously belonged to this merchant, and now he has paid for his atrocities. The man noticed that he no longer has his right arm. He is experiencing severe shock, and it seems that because of this, he does not even feel pain. He just looks at this wound in silence. It turned out that Shumo, with one movement of his palm, was able to cut off his hand. The man is still looking at his wound, and the white-haired one is still very small, and after what she saw, she begins to cry. Wiping his hands from his blood, the cool protagonist says that no one except himself has the right to encroach on her life. He makes it clear to this swindler that he has already lost. Chia Yan begins to pull Shumo's clothes, trying to attract his attention, and is about to ask him something. Perhaps she has questions about all this cruelty. The girl didn't even have time to finish her sentence. Her attention was attracted by a huge sword that appeared right in front of her, Shumo standing next to her and telling her to kill this man with her own hands. In order for the girl to quickly decide to finish off this man, the guy decides to remind her that he must have tormented her quite a lot. The merchant looks very scared and helplessly tries to crawl back. The girl remembered the moment when she was calmly eating with the other children. This man came up to her and threw her plate on the floor. He was not happy that she was eating a lot, believing that it was a waste of resources. Next, this idiot decides to jump on this girl and pin her to the ground, starting to beat her. He doesn't understand why she didn't kneel down and apologize. The rest of the guys are trying to leave their boss because he can beat her to death. We again see the girl who is about to take this sword. She, remembering all those terrible moments, begins to cry. She just wants revenge and is already going to kill this villain. Shumo stands behind the girl and incites her to kill. He says that this freak entered into a conspiracy with an influential man, after which he began to sell children. She, having suffered all the bullying from him, can now take revenge. In the next chapter, we see how the determined Chia Yan is about to finish off the merchant. The man became scared and he says that she would not dare to finish him off, because he was the one who picked her up and nursed her. The girl, armed with a sword, begins to slowly approach him. With difficulty pulling this sword with her, the man tries to dissuade her and says that without his help she would have died long ago. The merchant notices that there is no way to dissuade this girl, so he finally decides to call her grateful, and says that she should have been thrown to the dogs long ago. Next, Chia Yan strikes directly at the villain's leg. The blow was so accurate that she was able to cut it off. The merchant promises to pursue her and not give her rest even after death. The merchant, lying on the ground, can no longer hold back his tears. Experiencing all this pain, he stretches his hand forward and begs the white-haired woman to stop this torture and finish him off as soon as possible. However, Chia Yan has completely different plans for this bad guy. She shows no mercy and only cuts off the hand that he previously extended to her. The hand flew far from the man himself, and he himself screams. You can see how the white-haired woman continues to cut this tough man. She strikes blow after blow with her sword so that he will pay for mocking her. Shumo, meanwhile, tells her to stop. The main character, noticing that the girl does not hear his words at all, decides to approach her and, touching her shoulder, tells her to stop, because he is already dead. You can see how the corpse of this man lies behind this girl. She, throwing away the bloody sword, tells Shumo that his order was carried out and apparently expects praise from him. The main character takes her hand and asks her to follow him, and then everyone who dares to annoy her will meet a terrible death. These words make the white-haired girl very happy, and she agrees to follow him. Meanwhile, they pass near Mr. Wang, who, noticing them, asks Shumo what to do with the rest of the orphans. The black-haired guy only says to give them money so that they try to survive. We see Lu Ruoshu again. She noticed how the main character, who in her opinion was supposed to take her away from here, is about to leave this place right now, so she asks them to wait. The red-haired woman begins to run somewhere. Because she realizes that she can no longer just stand and do nothing, she decides to first find a suitable place for cultivation. Next, the events are transferred to the cart, in which Shumo found himself after returning to the past. He is sitting right now at the table with Chia Yan and offers her food. Despite the fact that this girl's stomach is churning right now, she decides to show herself very modest and says that she is not particularly hungry, although you can't tell it from her. She still felt a churning in her stomach and realized that she was actually very hungry, so having somehow gained strength, she said that she was a little hungry, embarrassed at the same time. Suddenly, much more delicious food appeared on the table. The guy invites her to start with this. She looks at it all with a surprised look, because she hasn't seen anything like this at the shelter. Shumo doesn't understand what he's waiting for. She pounces on this food with great appetite and begins to eat everything, completely forgetting about manners. The main character understands that she is very hungry, but still asks her to eat slowly. While she is eating, the black-haired man decides to remind her of what he said earlier, namely that if she wants to follow him, she must allow him to set a limit in her body. Once these restrictions come into effect, she will never again be able to disobey his orders, nor will she be able to attack him. If she tries to do so, her soul will leave her body. Chia Yan is still eating, and Shumo, approaching her, says that before that, he considers it reasonable to first give her the right to choose, so she should think carefully about this. For the sake of an answer, the white-haired woman even put her food aside. It is clear that she is determined and tells the gentleman that she has already made her choice and does not intend to take back her words. The guy was satisfied with the little girl's answer, so he wasted no time in holding her head and closing his eyes, asking her to relax her body and not resist. We see a strange scene of Chia Yan being bound in a bunch of chains and being lifted up by them. Apparently this is part of the process itself, and the main character tells her that everything is ready. The girl looks very happy about all this. Shumo wants to check if these restrictions work, so he asks the white-haired girl to attack him so that she should hit him. Chia Yan was about to hit the main character at his request, but she suddenly felt some unusual pain inside herself and let her master know about it. Shumo, with an important look, says that this is all the effect of restrictions. If in the future she decides to cause him some harm, she will not get away with slight pain. Chia Yan promises that she will never betray him. Meanwhile, the manager of this cart makes it clear to his master that they have already arrived at the estate. Shumo heard him and is about to leave here. The black-haired guy, turning to Mr. Wang, asks to give the girl a room and instructs someone to wash her, since he is currently scheduled for Muning and he cannot do this himself. The old man with a sweet look approaches the cart and helps the white-haired girl get off it, asking her to follow him because he will definitely help her at Shumo's request. The two of them walk along a corridor and Mr. Wang asks her to go to one place. While they walk along this corridor, Chia Yan looks around in surprise, seeing beautiful rooms and different people. Then you can see how Mr. Wang brought Chia Yan to her personal room, and from now on this place belongs only to her. Most likely this is a very pleasant surprise for the girl. The white-haired girl begins to look around her room and is very happy with such a gift. She thinks that this place is very beautiful and cozy, and does not believe that she dares to live in such a place. No matter how strange it may look, Chia Yan decides to run out of this room, refusing to accept this room. Because she can sleep in the stable, the woman behind her asks her to stop. Apparently, when this girl lived in an orphanage, she often had to sleep in the stable because she was forced and she was already used to it, so she sheepishly tells the woman that she would be better off in the stable. Mr. Wang felt funny and he tries to persuade her to stay here, making it clear that their master personally chose her, and they cannot allow her to sleep in some stable. Van says that he needs to leave because he needs to resolve the issue with food, and now a servant will come to the girl who will help her change clothes and wash herself, which means that everything will be fine for her now. The white-haired girl is very surprised that everyone in this place treats her like a person. She understands that the young master is too kind to her, and he is already thinking about how to repay him. Next, we again see the main character, who right now is walking down the street about his business in an unknown direction. But then we must find out what he is up to there. He walks among a crowd of people who pay their attention to him. He continues to walk, immersed in his thoughts. He hopes that some things should still be in the place to which he is going. Shumo begins to walk through some dark, deserted nooks and crannies of this city, because he is in no way afraid for his life. If he is attacked, this strong guy will be able to repel the attack without any problems. We see some small shop and an elderly seller behind it. A guy in a red uniform approached him and says that the jade pendant is too small, and also damaged, and offers a price of no more than 20 stones. The seller in this shop is not happy with the guy's offer. He refuses it with a wave of his hand, saying that it will go into minus. He offers a minimum price of 50 stones. Next, the client offers to stop at an amount of about 30. Wanting to buy this stone, the experienced seller sees that the guy is ready to do almost anything for this thing, and says that he does not agree with this price either. While the two are bargaining, suddenly their attention was attracted by someone's voice. This person says that he is ready to give 100 spiritual stones for this pendant, from which the two are simply shocked. The mustachioed seller is very surprised by this and, paying attention to this man, does not believe that he is ready to offer 100 stones for this pendant, which seems to cost less. It turned out that this person turned out to be the main character. He boldly approaches this counter and, skipping the line, throws a huge gem right on the counter, wanting to buy this pendant. Looking at the man's reaction, the serious-minded protagonist, seeing how he simply continues to stand, already thinks that the seller is not satisfied with such a deal, even though he offered too much. The cunning seller says that this pendant is their family heirloom, and the main character drew attention to how this fool was going to sell the same relic for 50 stones. The seller decided not to refuse such a sum, so he is already handing over this pendant to Shumo. Since he wants it so much, his other client is very dissatisfied with this, because he was the first to see this pendant. The main character has already received the long-awaited item into his hands, and the dissatisfied dark-haired client, turning to the seller, says that he cannot do this because the guy came earlier. It turned out that this guy's name is Lin Ye, and he is the main character of the original novel. He, lying helplessly on the ground, realizes that Shumo is ahead of him this time too. Originally, Lin Ye was only an orphan who wandered the streets, but he had the gift of recognizing rare spiritual properties. Apparently, he saw spiritual properties in this pendant. By the goodwill of fate, this guy found an ancient jade pendant, which led him along the path of cultivation to immortality, right to the very top of this world. The main character, being satisfied, leaves this place with the pendant in his hands, hoping that their meeting will not take place again. The tench lying on the ground does not understand where he came from. Getting up from the ground, this loser realizes that the aura emanating from that pendant really surprises him, because he has never seen anything like this in his life before, and it's very exciting. Blue-haired remembers what this very pendant looked like. He considers this thing a real treasure, and is very sorry that he could not get it on time and it went into the hands of Shumo. Lin Ye looks very angry. He clenches his fist and intends to get this pendant for himself. He promises that one day he will make Shumo pay for what he did right now. Next, this guy's attention is attracted by some huge blue beam, which is directed straight into the sky. He already thinks that this is spiritual energy. Then he thinks that it does not look like it. He decides to come a little closer to this pendant, and in the meantime thinks that besides the jade pendant, there are some other sources of good energy, and is very happy about it. Having come a little closer, a beam of bright light begins to blind him, covering his eyes. He is already beginning to think that he has another chance, and the loss of this pendant is not yet a reason to be upset. In the next chapter, we again see Shumo, who returns to his home along the same back streets after buying a pendant. This pendant begins to exude some kind of energy. The main character turns his attention to the pendant. The pendant, in turn, hovers right above his palm. This item looks somehow broken, but Shumo apparently knows what he is doing. Then some objects begin to emanate from this ring. At first you can only notice orange and blue rays, but later it turns out that it is an orange ring and some kind of scroll. The guy realized that this is what he needs. He understands that this is actually a cloud scroll of immortals and a cloud spiritual key. It turns out that they will show the way to the secret spiritual kingdom. If he curbs it, he will be able to comprehend the kingdom of heaven. The so-called spiritual realm is a secret art created by a great master from the past. It is obvious that this place is very important if Shumo talks about it like that. It contains invaluable capabilities and knowledge. Legends also say that the treasures of ancient masters are hidden here. This yellow disc represents a secret spiritual kingdom. Most likely, Shumo hid these valuable items in his pocket. He understands that this time he is in control of his own destiny, and now he will not make any mistakes. Next, we see how, after some time, the main character returns to his home. He is already met by Mr. Wang, bowing to him and thereby expressing his respect. Wang says that he ordered that Chia Yan be allocated a third room in the eastern wing of their estate. Lunch is already ready, and he asks if Shu Mo wants him to invite the girl too. The main character believes that it would be better if he looked at her. Mr. Wang understood his master and realized that he had nothing to do here for now, so he decides to move away. Shumo wanders around the courtyard and looks around. He reached the third room in the east wing and realizes that the little girl is located right here and is already about to enter her. Entering the building, the guy is greeted by a woman. He responds with a serious look and nods his head to her, and already wants to see Chao Yang because he came here just for her. Meanwhile, in Chao Yang's room, two women are giving her a luxurious, warm bubble bath, both of them soaping up the little girl and making her feel comfortable. While these women were trying to calmly lather the Chao Yang, she asked them to stop and not do this because it was not necessary, and it was also a little embarrassing. The women, of course, listened to the young mistress and let her know that they were going to leave. The white-haired one understood them, and, having plunged into the water, apparently thought a little. The satisfied girl, having swam a little, leans on the edge of her bathtub. She is very pleased with this whole process, because for the first time in her life she is bathing in such a good bath. Meanwhile, Chao Yan hears how people greet the main character in the corridor, and he, as usual, hums in response. She was very surprised by this and does not want him to find her in this state. She is convinced that it is the young master. She dives sharply back into the water, from which splashes of water are visible all around, and tries to quickly find her clothes. Next, someone's hand is visible, which opens the door to the white-haired girl's room. This person is already about to go inside, and Chao Yan apparently is now very worried. It turned out that this was Shu Mo, who had returned after his long walk. Entering the room, he did not yet see the girl, but only heard her voice, which stuttered and asked him to wait. Chao Yan apparently decided that a brilliant idea had come to her mind. Holding her breath, she decided to hide underwater for a while so that Shu Mo would not see her at that moment. The guy has already gotten very close to the bathroom, where the girl is right now. She also stammers and asks the young gentleman if he has returned from his walk yet. The main character listened to the girl and, with a serious face, obviously understands what's going on. He decides not to go further to the girl so as not to embarrass her, and decides to apologize for his impudence. The girl felt ashamed that he had to catch her at that very moment. She continued to sit in the bathroom, already thinking about how to explain this whole strange situation. Next, the guy stood for a while in this girl's room and became convinced that now was really not the time to stand there waiting for something. So as not to strain Chao Yang once again, he decides to get out of there. After some time, the white-haired woman came out of the bath and dressed in a beautiful outfit. Still feeling ashamed, she stutteringly asks him for forgiveness for making him wait. Judging by the expression on the protagonist's face, he doesn't mind at all. He doesn't care that he had to wait. He just examined the girl from head to toe, appreciating her appearance, and says that the outfit fits her perfectly. It can be seen how this sweet girl, after the praise from the young master, sharply lifted her spirits, and after that she began to feel much better and thanked him for such wonderful words. Next, Shumo tells Chao Yan to quickly start following him. Right after the meal, they will need to try something. The little girl is already wondering what awaits her next. The two of them began to walk along the corridor of this large building. Near the entrance to one of the rooms, they were met by a woman who asked them to enter there. Apparently, there would be a meal there. Then the doors of this room opened. The main character with Chao Yang are already about to go inside. They are met by 5 people who are servants. They make it clear to their master that food is set on the table. There is too much delicious food on the table. KFS chicken, dumplings, salad, bacon, everything looks very tasty. And they can't wait to sit down at the table and start their long-awaited meal. Chao Yan is already looking at this table with pleasure. She can't stop admiring the food here. They ask her what she's waiting for because the food can get cold, so she should swoop in. The hungry girl quickly sat down at the table and immediately began to eat everything that came to her hand. The man, shocked by her appetite, asks her to eat more slowly because she might choke. After she dealt with the chicken, she proceeded to eat a whole bowl of soup. She, as usual in a hurry, took the whole plate and began to pour everything directly into her mouth, and from this she was already full. Everyone present in the room looks at this girl in shock. Her huge belly has come out, and now she can easily be confused with the moderator of the Discord server. People are asking her if she is definitely full. The girl suddenly became sad, apparently because she ate everything too quickly and did not show her manners, but she made it clear to everyone that she was definitely able to eat her fill. Turning to the young master, the girl says that she usually doesn't eat that much. It seems that she thinks that Shumo is somehow disappointed in her behavior. But he doesn't care about that. He's glad that she ate. The main character tells his servants to tell the boss not to reduce the size of the portions in the future. The man realized that 3 meals a day would be useful and said that this would be done. Shumo tells Chia Yan that since they finished the meal, it's time for them to move on. The satisfied girl is excited about what awaits her next. They arrived at some place and are still just standing there. The white-haired one is waiting for the main character to tell her what to do next. Meanwhile, he is already going to give his task. He gives the girl a scroll that he himself had previously received, and thereby makes her understand that she will have to deal with this. The white-haired girl looks at this thing in surprise and waits for further instructions. Shumo asks Chia Yan to look at the scroll. Its name is visible on it, namely the Cloud Scroll of Immortality, and apparently the girl will have to read the information that is in it. The main character told her to study the knowledge stored in it, and he himself would leave her alone for now. Chia Yan, having opened the scroll, sits on a chair and is about to complete his task. Next, we again see the same merchant who had previously sold the Shumo pendant. He, having broken something, understands that he should have checked more carefully. Suddenly, very rare properties were stored in that trinket. Just the thought of this ruined his entire mood, and meanwhile, a man is walking in his direction, apparently looking for something, hoping that it should be here. The merchant sees this man and asks for his forgiveness, saying that these words are not addressed to him, and on the contrary, his appearance, like a refreshing breath of wind, makes the gray-haired man think about something. The old stump asks to be allowed to ask a certain question, already about to take something out from under his clothes. At this time, he himself looks somehow kind at first glance. He asks the merchant if he has seen a jade keychain anywhere, and points his finger at the design of the pendant that the merchant had previously sold to Shumo. But grandfather does not know this yet. The merchant suddenly became worried. He realizes that this is the same pendant that he sold. Apparently, he realizes that he made a big mistake by selling it to the wrong person. In the next chapter, we see how the main character, placing his hand on Chia Yan's head, told her to try to breathe the spiritual powers of heaven and earth into her body. Meanwhile, some kind of energy emanates from her. While they are in the process of this, Shumo realizes that this girl is undoubtedly the villain of the novel, with extraordinary talents, and she will certainly be submissive only to him. Suddenly, the girl felt some kind of unpleasant feeling inside herself, and from this, she screamed slightly. She suddenly began coughing up blood, and apparently, the guy would have to take some measures to help. The guy remains completely calm, even in such a situation. Seeing what is happening to her, he decides to take her in his hands to assess her condition, and she, in turn, continues to cough. Realizing that he himself cannot help, the black-haired man turns to his servant and asks him to call Dr. Zhang here as soon as possible. The servant is going to do this right now. Next, the events are transferred to some alley. The line went to the source of light and reached some building from which all this light comes. He is about to open the door, behind which the light is also visible. He is convinced that the light really comes from this house. After opening this door, he saw something that he did not expect to see at all when he walked to the source of this light. It turned out that this is a little girl, namely Liu Ruo Shui, who seems to be meditating or conducting cultivation. The guy already thinks that she is his second chance. Linya decides not to waste time. He wants to sneak quietly into the house, but unfortunately for him, he stepped on some branch that broke and made noise. Already standing at the threshold of the house, he realized what he had done right now, and believes that this is all very bad, because he can attract the attention of the red-haired woman, and she can take some measures against him. The red-haired girl reacted very quickly to this guy. She stopped her meditation and suddenly found herself behind the blue-haired one and asked who he was, putting a sharp stick to his neck, very frightening him. The guy understands that he has no choice, so he decides to introduce himself in front of her. He says that his name is Lin Ye and he is an orphan, a street child since childhood, about 15 years old. The little girl, still continuing to hold a sharp stick at the neck of this weakling, heard his name and thought sharply, because his name seemed somehow too familiar to her. We are her memories. She remembers how in a previous life the ministers insisted on accepting a member of a certain sect named Lin Ye into the court. They assured that the boy had an unprecedented gift of finding treasures. However, Shumo rejected their proposal every time. She already thinks that these two had already known each other before, and she also thought about this serious question. Liu Ruoxue, remembering who he is, decides to let this blue-haired man go and believes that if he really helps her with the search for rare artifacts, then this could greatly speed up the process of her cultivation. Throwing the stick to the side, she lets go of the line. The guy realized that it was just a twig and not a knife. The red-haired girl, in turn, invites him to join her. The guy, hearing such an offer from her, was slightly embarrassed, but he could not refuse it and gave his consent. The red-haired girl liked the guy's mood. We return to the Chia Yan room. The doctor says that despite the mysterious gift of this girl, her condition is very deplorable, which is why her spiritual form has weakened greatly. This also explains her appetite. Shu Mo thinks that she is not ready for cultivation. Dr. Zhang says that he can prepare a potion that will return her body to a stable state, but this process itself is extremely painful, so the girl may feel unpleasant. The doctor says that, moreover, the potion will only serve as a temporary solution to the problem, and not a complete one. Until some time, Shu Mo wants to know exactly how long. It turned out that until Shu Mo found an extremely rare plant, namely the ice flesh jade herb, the guy thought about this herb and apparently he would have to get it. The main character thanks Mr. Zhang for the excellent job done, and the old man only bows to him, expressing his respect. Then the doctor is about to leave. Meanwhile, Chia Yan has already managed to wake up. The main character, noticing her open eyes, understands that she heard everything, and she, apparently, looks very surprised at the doctor's words. She abruptly gets out of bed and thinks that she disappointed Shu Mo by not being able to undergo cultivation. She is very ashamed, and, turning to him, she promises that she will practice a lot to make him proud of her. The black-haired one makes it clear to her that if she decides to continue, she will incur great pain on herself. The brave white-haired one tells the guy that pain does not scare her in any way, it can be useful. The main character hopes that these are not all empty words. He tells her that they will take a short walk tomorrow, and the girl makes it clear to Shu Mo that she is ready to carry out any of his orders. The black-haired man takes out some kind of yellow small bag from his pocket. Obviously, it is intended for Chia Yan, since it contains pollen that can dull pain. She accepts such a gift from the young master. Taking the bag in her hands, she thanks the guy, and once again is very glad that Shu Mo is very kind to her. Then it's late night. Events take place at this time right in Chia Yang's room. She lies on her bed and looks straight at the bag of pollen, holding it in her hands and giggling at the same time. She just can't calm down, because the young gentleman handed this bag to her personally. She is very glad that she had the opportunity to accept it. She begins to happily smell this bag. The white-haired girl believes that she cannot waste time now. While she turned over on her bed, she believes that it is time to take everything directly into her own hands to make Shu Mo proud of her. She begins, apparently, to perform cultivation. Having begun this complex process, she begins to feel a slight pain inside herself, and already thinks that this is the same pain that the doctor spoke about. She thinks that if this continues, she will endure it. The next day in the dining room, we see the main character, who came here and already hears how someone obviously saw the food, because after trying it, he calls it delicious. It turned out that this is Chia Yan, who also woke up and is already hastily eating everything with a nightmare appetite. With her mouth stuffed, she wishes Shu Mo good morning. Because of the food in her mouth, it was hard to hear. Shu Mo asks her not to rush. Next, the white-haired girl finally had her fill, after which she got up from the table and approached the main character. He asks her to hold on tight and make sure that the food doesn't come back. Going out into the street, the main character, suddenly flies up into the sky with her. She grabbed onto his clothes so as not to fall and screamed in surprise. The two of them flew to Jade Dragon Mountain. Shu Mo says that they have already arrived and there is one secret place in the mountains where they can easily find the ice flesh grass. These two have already landed on the ground. The guy tells her to get ready to follow him, and Chia Yan is standing on her feet trying to come to her senses, and it's difficult for her to give an answer, so she just hums. Suddenly, these two hear some sound similar to the snorting of an animal. The white-haired girl asks the guy what kind of sound it could be. He tries to listen to understand who exactly it is. Behind the bushes, you can see the toothy mouth of some orange tiger, which begins to growl, apparently because it has smelled the main character with a little girl and is about to attack. It turned out that this was a huge tiger, which Shu Mo, along with Chia Yan, considered easy prey. So he suddenly jumped out from behind the bushes, continuing to growl and about to tear them to pieces. The white-haired girl, noticing the tiger, did not even become afraid. She warned the gentleman about the danger and already ran to his aid to show what a strong and brave girl she really is. She stands right in front of the huge claws of this tiger, which are heading straight towards her. She noticed this and was slightly scared and confused at the same time, not knowing what to do in such a situation. Closing her eyes, you can see how she begins to cry slightly. At that moment, she wondered if she could protect the young master from this huge and dangerous beast, because he looks quite strong. In the next chapter, we see how Shu Mo uses his powers and stops this tiger. He considers that they were lucky to stumble upon the bloody amber flowers, as if everything would have been bad otherwise. Continuing to use his powers and hold the tiger in the air, the main character says that this pathetic beast will never be able to enjoy the beauty of bloody amber flowers. Next, you can see how Shumo turned this seemingly formidable beast into a pile of bones. He simply fell to the ground, and there was not a single piece of flesh left on him, as was before. Chia Yan is surprised that at first the beast turned into a skeleton, and now it has grown flesh. The main character explains to her that this is all a manuscript of revival, and since it is now evening, today there will be tiger meat for dinner. Shumo turns to one of the red flowers behind him, and using his powers directs a magical beam into one of them, which will apparently attract this flower directly to him. It turned out that this was so. This lazy Giga Chad did not want to approach him with his feet, so he simply pulled him towards him with the help of his superpowers. Shumo says that they should wait out the night right in the cave. The girl is very happy about this, because for her this is like a new experience. He grabs the tiger by the tail, pulls it along, and follows the master. A few moments later, night has already fallen. The main character and the girl are already sitting inside the cave. The white-haired girl is happily cooking, watching the meat being cooked, and Shumo is thinking about something. Next, the girl, already wanting to eat the meat of this tiger, decides to poke him with her stick, checking whether he is ready. Shumo, meanwhile, asks the girl to watch her breathing and be quieter. The white-haired girl does not understand what happened. Together, they begin to follow the mysterious figures in the pitch darkness. Chia Yan becomes interested, and she asks Shumo who these people are, expecting an answer from him. Standing behind her and just as carefully watching them, he tells the curious girl that these are followers of the sect. But it seems strange to him that they are even here now and does not understand what they want.
The guy thinks that perhaps they are the reason for the meager popularity of this area. Meanwhile, the girl is shocked by something and turns to the young master.
Then the two return to the cooked meat on the fire. Shumo tells the girl that their goals are unknown to them yet, but if they dare to interfere with the plans of the black-haired man, they will definitely die. They begin to show us the events that are happening somewhere in the forest that night. Liu Ruo Shui, walking through the forest, notices one cultivator. She finds it suspicious that she has already stumbled upon them for the third time. Suddenly, while the red-haired woman was looking at one of the cultivators, trying to understand what they were doing here, her attention was attracted by Lin Ye, who asked her to look at one place, saying that there were traces of a battle. The red-haired woman, without wasting time, begins to examine this strange place. It seems familiar to her. She notices jade grass, a bloody amber flower, and does not understand why she cannot find anything. Lu Ruoshua, having carefully examined this place with traces of the battle, got to her feet and decided to think about who is causing this whole pogrom, either because of the sect, or is it all the work of Shumo? The red-haired one decided that she wouldn't do that. She wanted to find an alchemical furnace as soon as possible and start making elixirs. The surprised blue-haired one didn't understand where she was running so quickly. Hearing how Lin Ye addresses her, the little girl suddenly stops and turns to him, saying that she continues her search and if he is afraid, he can just stay here. After which she didn't even let the blue-haired guy say anything. She answered his question and simply continued running further. And Lin Ye didn't even have time to warn her that moving at night was too risky. Then morning comes. Events are again transferred to the cave in which Shumo and Chia Yan spent the night. Morning has come and we see how the sun's rays begin to wake up the girl. She woke up with the first rays of the sun and, rubbing her eyes, notices that her body is somehow very heavy and thinks that it is because of the last training session in which she participated. Next, we can see how the main character again casts a spell and touches her forehead with his finger. Waves form at this place, and he says that in a few days she has reached the 6th level of ki purification. He says that her body is still struggling with heaviness and pain. Despite all this, the white-haired one is slightly embarrassed and does not even understand what her young master is talking about. Shumo is not stupid and he has already realized that she was training without his knowledge. He says that at this rate she will only harm herself, and Chia Yan says that she wants to be useful. Still, the main character makes it clear to her that he does not want to talk about this topic, so turning away, he tells her that it is time for them to go. The white-haired girl listened to him and is already running in his direction. The guy suddenly hands the girl a bottle. She will have to take this medicine during their training, as this substance will help her dull the terrible pain. The white-haired girl, taking this bottle in her hands, continues to joyfully look at it. She never ceases to be happy that the main character shows so much kindness to her. She just wants to say something when she is immediately interrupted. Shumo doesn't understand why she froze down there, because it's time for them to go. The white-haired girl was not offended that she might have been accidentally interrupted and not allowed to finish. She happily ran after the master. Meanwhile, deep in the forest, our heroes are walking through the forest. A girl asks about the value of the alchemical furnace they are going to. Shumo says that it is superior in quality to other furnaces, and it should be here. The black-haired man suddenly stopped, and not just like that, but in order to warn the girl that the path to the stove was blocked by a jade snake and she should be careful not to fall under its attacks. While these two were talking to each other, suddenly some noise attracted their attention. They realized that there was someone there and, apparently, there was some kind of battle there. Next, the brave Shumo decides to quietly peek out from behind the bushes to look at the source of the sound and make sure what is happening there and at the same time remain unnoticed. Judging by the expression on his face, he saw someone familiar. It turned out that he saw Lin Ye, who is right now fighting with a jade snake armed with his sword. The main character does not understand what this hero of the novel forgot. You can see that this loser is losing in a fight with a jade snake. It threw him far back, and after flying a few meters, he lands on solid ground and feels pain. Wiping the blood from his mouth, this blue-haired man still continues to lie on the ground and does not understand why she is fussing there. Most likely he means Liu Ruoshui, who is busy with something. Even though this snake decides it can easily kill this guy, he still confidently gets up from the floor and raises his weapon, ready to deal with the enemy alone. The snake, seeing that this guy is completely restless, decides to show him who is boss and, starting to hiss loudly at him, opens his mouth wide, exposing his teeth and is going to kick his ass. However, the actions of the huge snake did not frighten the brave Lin Ye at all. He just jumped high above it, pointed the tip of his sword directly at its head, and was about to land right on it with a scream. Meanwhile, Shumo is just watching this whole fight from a safe distance, namely from behind the bushes. Seeing what the blue-haired guy is doing, he considers him a complete idiot at this moment. Lin Ye still continues to fly straight at the head of this snake. He believes that everything is fine and he will definitely succeed this time, and he will be able to successfully finish off this snake. When the guy flew close enough to this snake, he already thought that he had finally won this long battle. But the snake had an ace up its sleeve. It did something that Lin Ye definitely could not expect from it, judging by his facial expression. In the next chapter, we can see how Lin Ye, pointing his sharp sword at the head of the jade snake, is about to strike with a great desire to finish it off. Further, we can notice that this loser, of course, did not succeed. The snake only hit him with its large tail, from which he leveled his weapon and flew several meters away. You can see how the line flew several meters at a very high speed. It flew touching various bushes. In the end, it crashed as if into a huge stone. The blue-haired one flew so fast that when he crashed into a stone, he slightly damaged it. He remains helplessly lying in this place, thinking that everything is over for him, and the snake, starting to hiss, is about to eat him. Fortunately for the injured Lin Ye, the main character suddenly appeared in front of him. Who was going to save him from this dangerous sick snake right now? The guy just can't believe it. The jade snake turned its attention to this protector of its victim. This makes it scary and it no longer knows what to do, and only looks at the small Shumo. The black-haired guy says that it seems like fate itself wanted them to meet, so that he could extract her core, after which he is already going to kick this snake's ass. You can see how Shumo begins to remove the core from the snake's body. She, in turn, being helpless against him, only begins to hiss while the core flies out of her mouth. The frightened blue-haired man watches this whole picture, and covering his eyes from the light, he decides to tell the main character that this snake can control spiritual power. Suddenly, a huge and powerful explosion occurs. A blue blast wave appears. All the animals that were nearby decide to escape from here as soon as possible so as not to get hit. Apparently, this explosion belongs to a huge snake. She pretended to be very weak and helpless in order to deliver a powerful blow to Shumo, while he relaxed and did not expect. Now she is looking into the cloud of smoke, trying to see the guy. The smoke slowly began to subside. The figure of Shumo began to emerge from it. He just continues to stand proudly. And even in such a situation, he is completely calm. He thinks that this is all that a snake is capable of. The snake, together with Lin Ye, drew attention to this guy. They noticed that even after such a powerful explosion, he remained alive. The jade snake no longer even knows what to do next. There is only a little smoke left, and the main character, being determined, begins to slowly approach the huge jade snake, intending to show it who is boss. Next, the frightened monster, apparently realizing that he is not a worthy opponent for Shumo, decides to run away from him as soon as possible, so as not to die at his hands just like that. Suddenly, a Chia Yan appears on the path of this snake. The main character turns to it and does not understand what it is doing here, because it should have stayed in a safe place. Unexpectedly for the big monster, a huge wave appears in front of him, stopping his movement. This monster is scared because Shumo can overtake him at any moment. From the side of this strange wave, a bunch of stones begin to fly at this monster. Out of despair, he stops and covers his head right behind his strong body, about to take the blow. Apparently, this wind had the same effect on the white-haired one. She, slightly frightened, tries to somehow stay on her two legs so as not to fall to the ground. The evil snake apparently thought that it already had nowhere to run, so it decided to take at least someone with it to another world. It opened its mouth and attacked the little girl. Unexpectedly, at the last moment, a large stone wall forms between the snake and the Chia Yan. The snake, trying to crawl across it, suddenly froze and could no longer move. It turned out that this was all the work of the main character. It was he who summoned this wall and froze the nasty snake. He, angry at its actions, was about to tear it to shreds and clenched his fist.
We see a cruel wall, how the guy clenched his fist and caused the ice in which the monster was immersed to split, causing the body of a huge snake to also tear into pieces.
You can see how the severed body of this snake lies behind the hero. Everything is covered in blood. This means that Shumo was able to easily defeat his enemy, and after that he deservedly received the core into his hands. We can again see the white-haired woman who, surprisingly, remained alive after all this. However, she was slightly dirty. She repents before the master and understands that she was too careless. The guy listened to Chia Yan and said that she was in no way to blame, because thanks to her, he managed to extract the spiritual core in perfect condition. She is glad that she could help him. If the snake were to shift its attention to Shumo, it would probably feel in a desperate situation, and this would provoke the injection of snake venom into the spiritual core, which greatly deteriorates its quality. The satisfied black-haired one encouraged the girl and said that the snake, surprising the white-haired one, was inflamed with hope, and this allowed him to extract the core in perfect condition. Chia Yan understood what exactly she had done. He continues to praise the girl, saying that she did a great job. Then he takes out a container of pollen and begins to rub it into the girl's knee. The white-haired one seems embarrassed. After Shumo praised the girl, he turned away and told her that it was time for them to move on. The girl continued to sit on the ground and think about something, looking at the back of his head. The white-haired girl still continues to sit on the ground, having carefully thought about everything. She understands that this gentleman has just praised her. She is very happy about this and cannot hide her smile. We again see Lin Ye, who is behind the bushes and looks very angry, and seems like he is going to hit those bushes, remembering how Shumo came to him. The evil blue-haired one does not understand what the main character forgot in this place. Apparently Lin Yi prefers to be here alone, or he was trying to find something valuable here. Suddenly the guy remembers some large jug with unknown contents. Apparently something valuable is stored there, and the blue-haired man tensed slightly, thinking that Shumo also knows about this treasure. Linya suddenly realizes that now is not the time to hit these unremarkable bushes, so starting to walk in an unknown direction, the evil guy hopes that Shumo does not know about the treasure, and believes that now the main thing for him is not to get caught. Unexpectedly for this fool, Shumo appears in front of him, who blocks his path and asks where he is going now. Lin Ye, paying attention to him, does not understand how he ended up here. The blue-haired guy's face changed from angry to somewhat confused after he saw the main character. The blue-haired guy scratching his head and stutteringly says that he's in no hurry. The attentive Shumo turned his attention to Lin Ye's confusion, so when he approached him, he seemed to decide to put pressure on him. Asking where his companion was, the blue-haired man could see that he was scared by this question. The guy in red clothes started looking at the floor in fear and said that she ran away. From the expression on his face, you might think that he was lying. Shumo apparently paid attention to this. It seems that the main character is about to go somewhere, but before that he asks him one last question, asking if he has met cultivators from the sect. Lin Ye said that he has met them recently. This is all that Shumo wanted to hear, after which he determinedly headed towards the entrance of the cave. Lin Ye did not like this, and he begins to point in the direction that the cultivators of the sect were walking, trying to distract him. The blue-haired one noticed that the serious Shumo was not paying any attention to him. He still continued to go into the cave. The blue-haired one realized that Ruo Shui was sitting there and did not want these two to meet each other. The black-haired man nevertheless entered this cave, and Lin Ye could not stop him in any way. Having entered here, Shumo begins to look around and suddenly smelled the smell of blood, and this seems strange to him. Turning towards the source of the smell, the black-haired man noticed something that could surprise even him. Right now, he was going to go and check what was going on there. Shumo continues to stand and looks in surprise at the pile of bones that previously belonged to different people. He realizes that the smell of blood is coming from approximately this side, and despite the danger, he will go to check. Further, it may seem that Shumo smelled the scent of a League of Legends player who had not left his room for several days and played his favorite game. He felt disgusted. He covered his nose with his hand and said that he did not remember this in his past life. He thinks that the followers of the Ley Land sect are involved in this, but does not understand that they forgot the Emerald Dragon in the mountains. Their level of the first and second stages cannot be compared with the spiritual level of the serpent. The guy watches someone's skeleton, next to which lies a bunch of stuffed bags. The guy understands that under such conditions it would not be wise for them to take such risks. Continuing to look at the pile of stuffed bags, the curious Shumo couldn't resist and decided to take one of them into his hands. Touching it, it might seem that the black-haired man knows what awaits him inside. Further, you can notice that while the guy was trying to calmly inspect this valuable bag, he turned his attention to some strange sound next to him. Turning around, he tried to understand who it was there. In the next chapter, we see how Shumo, turning behind his back, does not notice anything except an empty cave. He already thinks that he imagined this sound, because he seems to be completely alone here. Having made sure that there is no threat yet, the black-haired man decides to continue examining this bag. He understands that he needs to keep his mind cool and first wants to make sure of something. But suddenly he found something. He took out from his hand the same vase, which was also distorted by the line. The surprised protagonist holds it in his hands and is very glad that he managed to find it before the others, and now he can leave. The guy suddenly remembered the same noise that he had recently heard. He realizes that such a strange sound could not have happened just like that, and there was clearly someone behind him. The black-haired man decides that he can't just leave it like that and needs to find the person who made this strange noise. He begins to examine this cave in the hope of finding someone, but he can't. Continuing to examine this cave, Shumo still did not find anyone, but he suddenly heard someone screaming outside the cave and was distracted by it. Apparently, he would have to go to the source of the scream. The main character realized that it was Chia Yan screaming, so he wasted no time rushing towards the scream as quickly as he could to help his beloved girl. Shumo has already run away, and we find out that the sound he heard in the cave was made by Liu Ruo Shui. Right now, she was hiding from him. Realizing that it was Shumo himself, she is glad that he could not find her. The evil red-haired woman gets to her feet and realizes that Chia Yan has enlisted his help. She is looking for all the advantages that originally belonged to her in a past life. We see some of her memories. She walks through this very cave and tries to find something. Judging by her facial expression, she was able to see something very valuable. Liu Ruoxiu begins to rummage through those very bags, intending to find something valuable there, and taking one of the heavy bags begins to carry it somewhere so that no one comes here and takes it. A little girl, having started to carry this heavy bag, hears how someone is about to enter the cave. Without even trying to make out this silhouette, she immediately throws the bag and runs to hide. We leave the memories of the red-haired girl, regretting that the main character did not take her from the orphanage. She suddenly remembers the alchemical furnace and is going to see where it is. She wastes no time pouncing on one of the bags that the main character had previously examined. She did not find this item there and thinks that Shumo really took it. Liu Ruosue, realizing that she had lost such a valuable item, kicks the remaining bags in rage. She does not believe that he found this stove and sees that there is nothing left in this cave except garbage. The red-haired girl, having examined the cave and made sure that there is no stove anywhere, decides not to waste time and immediately goes somewhere, apparently to find the stove. Next, we see events that take place outside. Not far from the cave, there is a frightened Chia Yan, who is surrounded by some kind of blue lasers and asks someone to let her out. It turned out that this was a gang of cultivators who locked the girl behind bars and were seriously asking her about where a certain person was, expecting an answer from the white-haired woman. Suddenly, the girl seems to be electrocuted by one of these lasers. She jumps back and grabs her right arm, looks at the bad guys and tells them that she doesn't know who they are talking about. Meanwhile, the leader of this sect is approached by his subordinate, who, to his surprise, says that the aura of the Jade snake is not felt. The leader does not believe that it could simply die. The guy says that this is the land of the Jade snake, and this white-haired girl with her spiritual level definitely couldn't defeat her, so someone else who was with her did it. The girl, in response to the guy's question, simply remains silent and looks straight into his eyes with a very angry look. This fool didn't like her behavior, and apparently he won't leave it that easily. The guy decides to teach her a lesson and, opening the bars, grabs Chia Yan by the neck and lifts her up. The cruel guy demands that this girl tell them what happened to the snake. Holding the girl by the neck with one hand, the guy only now realized that she is actually a cutie. Chia Yan tries to resist but cannot do anything to him, so she tells him to remove his hands. The guy got very angry. He threatens her and says that if she doesn't explain to them what happened here, then he won't restrain himself. Unfortunately for this fool, someone cut off his hand with a sharp movement, and he didn't understand it at first. A moment later, this fool noticed that his arm was completely missing. His wound was starting to bleed a lot, and this loser was just screaming helplessly in pain. Meanwhile, the severed hand still continues to hold on to Chia Yan's neck, but she fell since there is no longer any support, after which she removes the hand from her throat and throws it away. The remaining members of this group have already taken out their weapons and do not understand who cut off the hand of their leader. They demand that this strong man show himself, and they hope to kick his ass. Of course, all this was done by Shu Mo, who, as usual, is completely calm and does not even try to hide from the bad guys. He just stood in front of them and freed Chia Yan from captivity. The girl again begins to feel shame because, in her opinion, she disappointed the master. She asks him for forgiveness because she allowed bad people to catch her. However, the guy doesn't care that she's trying to justify herself right now because it's not her fault, so he asks her to wait here while he turns his attention to the remaining bad guys. A crowd of armed cultivators attack Shu Mo in a crowd, planning to finish him off right now because they think that his level is not higher than Ling Tai. The armed bandits have already gotten quite close to the main character, and he, like a real Sigma, remains calm and is just waiting for the right moment to show them his trump card. The guy is in no hurry. He only slightly turns his head towards these bandits and raises some cards, intending to use them. Shu Mo says that they asked for it themselves. Getting ready to attack the main character, the bandits apparently thought that they could not cope with him, so he suddenly decided to grab Chia Yan, and she stood in a fighting stance, intending to fight back. In an attempt to save a little girl, the protagonist uses his cards. The surprised bandits notice this and realize that it is actually a blocking talisman. The bad guys suddenly start to light up somehow. They start dropping their weapons and realize that their spiritual energy is sealed, and they are too helpless right now. After carrying out this process, these bandits understand that now they will feel bad. Judging by the expression on their faces, they do not understand what is happening now, and it seems they have already lost. Next, one of the bandits notices something much worse than the sealing of his spiritual energy. He looks at it and sees Chia Yan, with whom something strange is happening. The guy does not understand what to expect from her. You can see how the white-haired woman begins to be illuminated with blue light and looks somewhat serious. It seems that she has become much stronger and has become very dangerous for these guys. From the crazy expression on Chia Yan's face, we can tell that this is no longer the little and cute girl we know. Right now, she is ready to tear the butts of all these bandits. The serious protagonist notices how the girl is already ready for a fierce battle. He makes it clear to the white-haired girl that they only need one alive, and she can have fun with the rest. The girl already has a huge weapon in her hands, which she professionally holds in her small hands. The girl has listened to her master's order and is ready to begin to carry it out. You can see how she, with full confidence, jumps right on these bad guys and is already about to hack them into small pieces. The frightened guys begin to scatter in different directions, asking her for mercy. A crazy little girl begins to cut her offenders into small pieces. Their body parts are scattered on the ground and their screams can be heard. From the expression on her face, you can tell that this brings her pleasure. After this sadist has dealt with the entire group, cutting them into pieces, she approaches their leader and he turns his attention with horror to her terrifying sword. Chia Yan calls the leader a bird talker and is already approaching him with a crazy look. He is not going to kill him yet because they needed at least one living bad guy. In the next chapter, we see how the previously crazy girl becomes sweet again. She drags the leader of the group by the leg and tells the main character that she has dealt with the rest. The girl throws the armless guy to the ground, right under Shu Mo, who is looking from above directly at this weakling, and is already about to begin what he was about to do. The gang leader fell to the ground, but the landing was not the softest. He lies on the ground and is already awaiting his end, realizing that before that they are going to interrogate him. The joyful white-haired girl took the things of these bad guys right out of their pockets. She shows them to her, intending to give them to him and is already expecting another praise from him. The main character doesn't care about their things. He tells Chia Yan to keep these things for herself, and he himself has more important things to do. The white-haired one looks very happy, since he allowed them to keep their things. The black-haired man walks straight up to the armless man and starts doing something with his hand. He summons some kind of water sphere that he is going to use on this wounded guy. The black-haired man uses this ball on the bad guy who was lying unconscious in front of him, hoping that with the help of this, he will be able to bring him to his senses and interrogate him without any problems. You can see how this trick worked. The armless man woke up and this armless man woke up, after which he begins to look at the main character, expecting any strange actions from him. Shu Mo is a serious guy. He doesn't like to waste time and always likes to get straight to the point. He looks at the guy who has just woken up and says that he will answer his questions and immediately asks his name. The frightened head of the group, who did not answer the question, despite the menacing appearance of Shu Mo, asks his own question in response, trying to find out who they are and why they killed their students. It's clear that even the white-haired one didn't like the fact that this lying idiot doesn't do what he's told, so she decides to take everything into her own hands. Shumo sees her intentions and allows her to do what she wants to do. The main character stepped aside. Now Chia Yan stands in front of the armless man, who with a serious look takes out her magic weapon and thereby intimidates the guy who is already about to tell everything. This leader of the group kneels in front of the girl and, realizing that he can really be killed, begins to answer the question, saying that his name is Yu Zhe and he is a faithful follower of the Leilan sect. Shumo heard the answer and, approaching the guy, asks another one, namely, what is the Leilan sect doing in the Jade Dragon Mountains? The armless man says that they came in search of the secret kingdom of Yunling. His answer greatly surprised the main character. You can see how he tensed up and grabbed Yu Zhe and asks from whom they learned about the secret kingdom. He says that the rumor was started by the elders of the Qingtang sect. Shumo does not understand where they got such information from. The bad guy tells Shumo that he doesn't know anything anymore. The black-haired guy, realizing that he has nothing more to learn from him, simply rudely throws this guy away from him. The frightened armless man is already crawling towards the main character and, grabbing his clothes with tears in his eyes, asks him for mercy because he answered all his questions as he wanted. The main character listened to him, but as you can see, he has completely different plans. He asks for forgiveness from Yu Zhe and says that today he is destined to die and is already charging his hand. Yu Zhe saw Shumo's intentions and decides to try again to beg him to spare everything, but this does not have any effect on the black-haired man. He decided to finish what he started and simply incinerated the guy. Meanwhile, this whole picture was observed by Chia Yan, who after what she saw did not show any emotions, although before she could simply cry. Apparently after meeting Shumo, she was already accustomed to all these horrors. After completing his work, the main character touches the white-haired woman's shoulder, attracting her attention, and says that it's time for them to leave here. She paid attention and is going to follow him. Next, you can see how the little girl, having heard the words of her master, expresses all her devotion to him and immediately went straight after him in an unknown direction. You can see how these two are already going back into the dense forest. Meanwhile, someone's voice is heard from the tree, who notices that they have left and is glad about it because he is already sliding out of the tree. You can see someone's hand, and this person is about to fall from the tree from which he was watching the main character. Along with Chia Yan, he tries to hold on, but he fails. It turned out that this person was Lin Ye. Having failed to stay on the tree, this loser begins to fall from it and is already preparing to meet the solid ground face to face. The landing was very hard. He decides to sit on the ground for some time after landing, leaning his back against this very tree and rubbing the back of his head, because it hurt him. It turned out that along with him, Liu Ruoxue was also following the actions of the main character. She still did not understand what Secret Kingdom Yunling was talking about and already wants to find out what it is. The red-haired girl was very angry that the answer was still unknown to her. She hit the boulder with her small fist, thereby breaking it. Lin Ye looked very surprised because of the strength of this little girl. Still very angry, she turns to the guy and doesn't understand why he's still sitting on the ground. She tells him to get up quickly. He doesn't understand what's happening, but he's going to listen to her order. They begin to run together in one direction. The girl says that they will follow Shumo along with Chia Yan to the east, while maintaining a distance, and they will find out where this kingdom is. The events are transferred to a completely different place. We see someone's fire, which was lit quite recently. And apparently Shumo and Chia Yan are sitting next to it and decided to rest. Next, we are shown the main character, who sits in front of an alchemical furnace, which he found earlier in a cave. He seems to begin to meditate, and some yellow rays emanate from it. The stove continues to smoke yellow smoke. It feels like a genie is about to come out of it. Shumo, after this process, understands that now he needs to wait until everything thickens. While the guy was walking around thinking about something, he turned his attention to the joyful Chia Yan, who was carrying 2 dead hares in her hands, letting the gentleman know that they would have a delicious dinner today. The white-haired girl sat down right next to the main character and understands that it looks like they are almost there and they only have to go a little bit. But on the way, they meet more and more cultivators, and this is dangerous. Meanwhile, the girl is preparing the recently caught hares. Noticing that the guy is not responding to her words, she thinks that he is puzzled by something and decides to clarify this with him. The black-haired man explains his thoughtfulness to the curious girl by saying that there are still a couple of points that he did not have time to figure out, so he definitely wants to do this. Chia Yan tells the guy that she managed to collect some useful information. The guy looked at her with interest and wants to listen to what she is now going to tell him. The white-haired girl happily lets him know that, judging by the conversation of the cultivators, disciples of 3 sects are heading to the secret kingdom, so this might mean something for Shumo. Chia Yan also tells the main character that, moreover, the masters of the three sects personally arrived at the Jade Dragon Mountains to find something important for them there. The guy was very surprised by the words of this girl. He just can't understand what the masters of the three sects need from this place, and for what purpose they came here. Apparently now he will have to start solving this question. The girl still doesn't stop and continues to talk about it. A little earlier, the elder of the Qingteng sect decided to go in search of the jade ring that the main character bought. When he asked the merchant about the ring, his answer shocked this old man. The elder, learning that the ring was no longer there upon arrival in his territory, sent his students to search for it. After hearing the girl's story, the black-haired man suddenly thought about it, heard about the slums, the jade ring, the elder of the Qingteng sect, and the secret kingdom of Yunling, and then tries to find a connection in this. While he was thinking, he was again distracted by Chia Yan, who had already managed to prepare food, and turning to the master, wants to treat him. The black-haired man is very immersed in his thoughts and asks her to wait with this. He remembered how, heading into the slums, he took advantage of the opportunity that originally belonged to Lin Ye and started a chain reaction, which led to the fact that the elder of the Qingteng sect found out about the secret kingdom of Yunling. While Shumo was thinking about everything, the white-haired girl had already eaten half of all this delicious food. The guy, having thought it over well, realized that everything fits together, and the girl was waiting for the moment to treat him. After all his thoughts, the guy smelled this delicious, freshly prepared food. He realized that the smell was very pleasant, so much so that his stomach was already grumbling. The white-haired woman had been waiting for this moment all this time. Seeing signs of hunger in her master, she immediately offered him a piece of meat, which he, of course, could not refuse, and began to eat it. Suddenly, while these two were eating and not paying attention to anything, the alchemical furnace began to make noise near them. Apparently its contents were already ready, and Shumo had to check what was inside. You can see how Chia Yan doesn't even care what's going on around her, since she just eats despite everything, and the main character, having stopped his meal, rushes towards the stove, intending to check what's going on with her. In the next chapter, the satisfied protagonist suddenly notices that the contents have turned into a pill consisting of bloody amber flowers. Even a bright flash of light can be seen emanating from this furnace. The main character, realizing that these pills are already completely ready, begins to approach this bright alchemical furnace to take them out and inspect them in order to study and check their quality. Approaching the furnace and taking 5 glowing pills from there, Shumo was convinced that this was truly a dragon alchemical furnace, and apparently it was too good, since the pills turned out to be of too high quality. The satisfied guy begins to put these pills in his bag to carry them with him on hikes, because at any moment something can happen, and these pills can just help him with the girl. However, the main character left one of the pills in his hands. Silently looking at it, he decides to give it to the little girl as her reward for all the trials that she went through with him. The white-haired girl took this pill into her hands and joyfully began to examine it. She would never stop rejoicing at new gifts from the master, so even with this pill, she was too happy. This could be understood from her face. From the expression on Shumo's face, one can understand that he is really proud of Chia Yan. He tells her that in order to be useful to him, she must continuously improve. She understands this perfectly and will definitely follow the black-haired man's advice. Next, the main character decides to go to bed to rest after such a hard day. Before that, he reminds the girl of the words he said to her and says that she has 8 days left, which she should spend usefully. It is clear that she understands this. The guy tells the girl that in 8 days the entrance to the secret kingdom of Yunling will open, and then they will be able to use the key to enter it. Chia Yan still listened to him carefully and promises to train hard. The white-haired girl understands that she shouldn't waste time, so she sits down on the ground and begins her training right now to show the master what a good and obedient girl she is. Suddenly, right during training, this girl's stomach growled. She realized that she was feeling very hungry again, and since this was a valid reason, she would apparently have to postpone training and go have a snack. Chia Yan tries to resist the strong feeling of hunger, but with embarrassment she realizes that she can't do this. So looking at the main character, she understands that she doesn't want to disappoint him, so having a quick snack, she will definitely continue. Next, the white-haired one, as usual with her great appetite, pounces directly on the fried piece of meat on a stick and begins to eat it like a real predator, believing that a short break on the ramp will not harm her. This girl slurped so loudly that she almost woke up Shumo, who meanwhile continued to sleep. She would apparently have to eat early if she did not want to wake up her tired master, who had become tired all day. Then the events move to the eastern part of the Jade Dragon mountain range. We see a huge portal and, apparently, 3 elders, behind whom a huge number of people have gathered, apparently coming here from different sects. 3 elders stood right in front of this portal and began to look at it thoughtfully, showing everyone how wise they were. One of these old men began to assume that this was the secret kingdom of Yunling. An elder with a long and thin beard starting to stroke it, looks at Elder 10 turning to him. He understands that this time his friend has managed to achieve a lot, and this simply impresses him. Elder Tang in turn decides to show himself to everyone from his humble side. He decides to thank his friend for the praise, and says that all this is just nonsense, and he has achieved a lot from a successful coincidence of circumstances. The third elder looks somehow too joyful. He understands that now the entrance to the secret spiritual realm is captured by their alliance, and even Mr. Shu Mo, who has the Jade Ring, will not be able to pass by them unhindered. One of the elders looks too confident in the strength of his alliance. He thinks that with the strength of the 3 sects, they are guaranteed success, and no one, not even the strongest enemy, can resist them, because there are too many of them. Ten decides to please his comrades even more. He says with a pleased look that, besides, the possibilities of this secret kingdom are more than enough for all of them. These words please the 3 elders, and they begin to laugh loudly. Events return to the cave in which our heroes spent the night. We see the white-haired one, who, as usual, woke up with the first rays of the sun and is already yawning, getting ready to get to her feet and preparing for a new day. Chia Yan slowly begins to wake up. One already gets the feeling that this girl has been tired since the morning, trying to get to her feet and starting to rub her eyes. She doesn't understand how much she's been practicing. Next, you can see how she is completely woken up. Looking around, she sees the main character, who is sitting right now and seems to be training himself, holding some kind of blue sphere in his hands. The white-haired girl asks him if 8 days have already passed. Without waiting for an answer from Shu Mo, Chia Yan understands that she needs to eat in the morning in order to gain energy for the whole day. So leaving the cave, she looks at him with a strange look and tells him that for now she will go get food. The brave white-haired girl decided to go out into the forest alone, and while she was wandering along the path in search of food for herself and Shu Mo, her attention was suddenly attracted by something. She does not understand what it is, but her curiosity tells her that she should go and see. Further, you can notice that the girl didn't even have to go and check who was making these sounds. The creature itself, with lightning speed, begins to approach the white-haired girl and already wants to eat her as soon as possible. It turned out that this is a huge black leopard, which, having gotten close enough to the girl, attacks directly at her, showing its sharp claws with teeth and is about to grab her and eat her. To the surprise of this black beast, this girl turned out to be not simple. Some kind of magical elastic protection appears in front of her, which this beast gets caught in, after which it bounces off her and stops near the girl. Suddenly for the animal, Chia Yan, being joyful, pulls its tail and is just trying to guess how much meat there is in this beast, and is already imagining how it cooks it on its fire and eats the meat with appetite. Of course, the leopard is not ready to tolerate such an attitude towards himself. He turns sharply and jumps on the white-haired one, intending to finish her off again. Chia Yan is completely calm, and she is already wondering what it tastes like. At the last moment, she uses some kind of blue shockwave, after which the leopard flies away from her at high speed, not expecting such a turn of events, and after flying a few meters, he crashes hard into a tree and could not survive this. Satisfied with Chia Yan, after this battle, she only shakes her hands and looks at the enemy she defeated. She is very proud of what she has done, and is going to return with him to the cave, after which she will build a fire and cook fresh meat. Events are again transferred to the cave. You can see how an independent girl lit a fire and successfully cooked a huge leopard, after which she decides to try a piece of its meat and realizes that it is very tasty, so it was not in vain that she hunted. While Chia Yan is eating, she decides to turn her attention to Shu Mo. Turning around, she notices that he is still practicing, and it would seem that this means that he should not be disturbed yet. Eating another piece of meat, the white-haired woman approached the guy, and watching him, she realized that if this gentleman does not wake up soon, then they risk missing the opening of the secret kingdom, and this is very bad. Having finished her tasty piece of meat, the girl sits down right in front of the main character and begins to look directly at his handsome face. She thinks that she still wouldn't mind a little admiring how Shu Mo does Muning. She continues to look at his face for some time, and suddenly she notices how a small butterfly has landed right on the main character's nose. She looks at it, and is already thinking about doing something about it. Realizing that the butterfly is preventing her from observing the beauty of Shu Mo, Chia Yan decides to drive this impudent butterfly away from his face, waving his hands near this annoying insect, and is already thinking of continuing to watch the guy. The girl suddenly became close to the main character, and to her great surprise, he suddenly woke up at that very moment and looked straight into her eyes. One gets the feeling that these two will kiss each other right now. Noticing how Shumo woke up after his meditation, the shocked Chia Yan suddenly jumps away from this guy and is going to justify himself as soon as possible so that the master does not think anything bad. The embarrassed white-haired girl looks away and tells the main character that this is not at all what he could have thought. Supposedly, she just wanted to drive away the butterfly and did not think of kissing him on the lips at all. This black-haired guy, remembering that she is not even 18 years old, quickly gets up from the floor and tries to change the topic of conversation, reminding them that they need to be in time for the opening of the secret kingdom. Chia Yan looks scared. Events again move to the entrance to the secret kingdom. Again, you can notice the alliance of 3 elders and 3 armies of warriors from 3 different sects who stand and wait open for this entrance. They are ready to deal with everyone who gets in their way. We again see Lin Ye together with Liu Ruoshui, who changed into the uniform of members of a local sect, trying to blend in with the crowd. The blue-haired one tells the girl that he never thought that they would be able to somehow sneak here. The red-haired girl is not satisfied with the uncertainty of this weak guy. She firmly steps on his leg, causing him pain, and with an irritated voice asks him to get ready, because they still have a long way to go and enter this portal. Suddenly, the guy notices something in the distance. He points at it with his finger and asks Liu Ruoshui to look there the same way. She notices something that she really likes. She looks at it with a satisfied look and understands that the show is already beginning. In the next chapter, we can see how this very show actually begins, namely, the entrance to the secret kingdom finally begins to open, which means all these people who were waiting for this event are about to rush inside right now. The elder with thick eyebrows looks at this discovery and is very happy about this long-awaited event. He understands that they all waited here for so long for a reason and are about to go inside right now. The 3 elders, noticing the opening of the entrance, realize that it is time for them to take action, so they all point their hands directly towards the entrance, and each of them fires 1 laser, each of which has a different color. From the side, you can notice a huge yellow beam that is directed straight into the sky. It makes a lot of noise and glows very brightly. So it simply cannot help but attract the attention of people who are currently wandering through this forest. Meanwhile, the main character, along with Chia Yan, are wandering through the forest. The white-haired one notices this one in the sky and attracts the attention of her master. He turns around and with surprise also notices this strange ray. The guy, continuing to examine this beam, understands that it seems that the 3 elders have already begun to act, which makes him slightly tense and worried, because he is well aware that the 2 of them, apparently, did not manage to get there before the enemies. Then the frightened face of the black-haired guy gives way to something calmer, because this genius finally realized that that alliance doesn't even have a key, so they won't be able to enter this mysterious world without it. Shumo realizes that because of this they still have time, so unexpectedly for the girl, he asks her to hold on to him tightly. Because she is going to take off again, the girl could not expect this at all, but still fortunately for her, she managed to grab the guy's clothes. The main character continues to fly with her towards the entrance. Noticing how the white-haired woman continues to scream in fear, the black-haired Sigma decides to tell her something to calm her down. Namely, he advises her to hold on tight, and if she falls, he will not look for her. Apparently it worked. Right in the flight, this savvy girl realized that the main character said these words for a reason, but only for her sake. He didn't want her to be afraid, and said this so that she would just calm down and start holding on to him tighter. Chia Yan lovingly hugs Shumo, because she is very glad that he is showing her his love and care, while the black-haired man does not even show any emotions at all, and only continues to fly forward and is on the way to his goal. In flight, the main character realizes that they may not make it in time, so they should not waste time. This time he warns the white-haired one that he is going to accelerate, and it is seen that he seems to have accelerated to the speed of light, towards the yellow beam. We again see the 3 elders who only silently continue to shoot their multicolored rays towards this portal, trying to somehow open it in order to go inside and enjoy the treasures that are in this mysterious world. Suddenly, an elder in a red uniform shooting a red ray from his fingers warns the others that something might happen to the portal now. Apparently, he believes that the entrance portal will now open. The rest of the elders agree with the opinion of their friend. After listening to him, they continue to shoot lasers from their fingers even harder, hoping that the entrance will soon open and are already eager to enter there. It is clear that the efforts of these elderly workers were not in vain. The dome, which is a kind of castle and does not allow them into the mysterious world, begins to crack under the pressure of a huge yellow ray. Soon they will be able to successfully get inside. Meanwhile, the main character, along with Chia Yan, had already flown up to this very place, the white-haired girl noticing how this dome was starting to break from the laser. Being very surprised, she called the main character and asked him to look at this scene. The black-haired man, having flown up to this place with the girl, looks at her request in the direction she points to and begins to realize with horror that they are apparently a little late and they need a new plan. The frightened white-haired girl turns around with Shumo and asks what they will do now, because she herself does not know, since the alliance of elders with a large army of their students will enter the mysterious world much earlier than them. Even in such an unpleasant situation, the main character, as always, remains completely calm. After thinking a little, he says that this girl can enter right after them. They just have to wait a little, and the two of them will be able to pass unnoticed. We again see these elders who continue to stand near the entrance and try to break through it. One of the elders, taking out some kind of ticket, hurries his supreme leader, who is now doing all the work alone. Elder 10 says that he has been ready for a long time. This very object, which one of the elders recently held in his hands, was directed directly towards that very sphere. Elder 10 considers this moment simply ideal, and he is pleased to watch it. Shumo, meanwhile, is watching this whole picture. He realizes that this is a talisman that seals space. It is actually quite a valuable thing, and it seems that this preparation cost the elders a large amount. Chia Yan again turns to his master and wants to find out what will happen if they still enter first. But Gigachad Shumo is calm as always. He is not used to worrying about various little things, so he advises her not to do this. The guy tells the worried white-haired girl that the most valuable treasures in this kingdom will not be so easy to find. So while these people are busy searching, they may not find them at all, but the two of them will have a chance. We again see the elder who used the valuable talisman at this entrance. After examining this entrance, he understands that it is already possible to enter, and, turning to the withering spirit sect, tells them not to waste time and enter here as soon as possible. The disciples of this master's sect heard him, and of course listened to his words. Without much hesitation, they rush into this entrance in a crowd to get into the secret kingdom, because they have been waiting for this for a very long time. It can be seen how each elder orders his sect to enter inside. The students of the Green Vine sect, as well as the Thunderous Fog sect, also joyfully run into this entrance in a crowd, as if Black Friday has begun. Meanwhile, we are again shown Liu Ruoxiu along with Lin Ye, who are about to enter this portal as the very last ones. The red-haired one hit the blue-haired guy with her elbow and began to hurry him up, saying that they need to quickly follow them. Having hit the guy, the girl immediately began to run towards this portal. This blue-haired man felt pain from her blow, but he still tries to keep up with her before this entrance closed, because there is very little time left. Suddenly, Ruoxiu's attention was attracted by something strange. She suddenly stopped halfway to this entrance and does not understand what happened. It is clear from her that she began to worry about something, and Lin Ye turns to her to find out what happened. The blue-haired one asking his question was more expecting some kind of calm answer, but the red-haired one, unexpectedly for him, simply ran further forward, saying that everything was fine and they needed to move on, since the entrance would soon close. We again see the main character together with a little white-haired girl. They watched as students of different sects ran into this entrance in a crowd, and what they saw at the end raised a question in Shumo, and he thought a little. The white-haired woman turns to her master, noticing his thoughtful and sad appearance, and decides to ask what happened to him. The black-haired one does not want to go into these details at all, so he says that nothing special happened. Meanwhile, the guy remembered how he, as it seemed to him, that he saw Liu Ruoxiu along with Lin Ye, who, like everyone else, were running into this entrance. He is trying to think everything over carefully, and is already beginning to assume that it was all just illusion. Then we see the elderly elders again. They waited until the students of their sects first ran into this entrance, after which they realized that it was time for them to go there too, in order to create a good campaign for the rest of the people. Elder Teng, being very pleased with the work completed earlier, believes that now only their own skills will help them on the path to capturing these treasures. Apparently, these old people are too confident in their abilities. You can see how the joyful elders are slowly heading towards the entrance to the mysterious kingdom. You can see how they are already very interested in seeing what it is like, being in that world and starting to collect many valuable treasures. The main character, together with Chia Yan, watching the elders from above, noticed how they also successfully entered this entrance, so Shumo and the girl flew up to this entrance and landed nearby, about to enter it. The black-haired man begins to slowly examine this magical dome, and apparently without any problems, realizes that the entrance is closed again, and some measures will have to be taken to reopen it and go inside. Chia Yan herself is already apparently confused. She spreads her hands in different directions and asks her master how they are going to enter there. Shumo has not yet answered her question and only silently reaches for his pocket. Of course, the main character cannot leave this little girl without an answer to her question. It turned out that he took out a key from his pocket that would open the entrance to this secret kingdom for them, and he let Chia Yan know about this. You can see how the entrance is already beginning to open. After the main character managed to open the locked entrance, he grabs the white-haired girl by the hand and is about to enter this secret kingdom right away with her. He asks her to hold on tightly to him. She understood him and is going to do just that. After entering this portal, these two found themselves in some wonderful and very green world. Butterflies fly around and beautiful trees grow. Chia Yan watches all this beauty with admiration and cannot get enough of it. Shumo, noticing that this little girl can't stop looking at the surrounding nature, approaches her and attracts attention, saying that they need to find a certain door before the elder. The white-haired one cannot understand which door she is talking about. Instead of just getting up and explaining everything to Chia Yan, Shumo realizes that they have absolutely no time and, grabbing her, he takes off and during the flight says that the secret kingdom consists of 9 floors and the door serves as a passage to the next floor. And it just so happens that the main character is always one step ahead of all his enemies. He tells the girl that he knows very well about the location of each of these doors in this secret kingdom, so they will now head there. He invites the white-haired girl to climb on his back so that it would be easier for her to hold on to him in flight. She is glad that he offered this, and together they set off on their way to meet one of these doors. Flying over one place, Chia Yan suddenly hears someone's voice, which, turning to the students, asks them to hear his command. The white-haired girl is very scared of this and talks about this to Shumo, hoping that he can calm her down or deal with these people. They are watching the students of the sect, who right now are also looking for the door on this floor. Their leader is going to reward the one who finds it first. Chia Yan, turning to the main character, trying to say what they are doing here. The black-haired one finished her sentence, saying that they started act. Shumo suddenly begins to sharply fall down. With his actions, he slightly scared Chia Yan. The main character is very glad that the passages are quite well hidden, so these villains will have to look for them for a long time. They calmly land on the ground, after which Shumo hides behind one of the large trees and apparently tries to follow someone. At this moment, the joyful Chia Yan turns to her master and tries to find out something from him. However, he is now following someone and it is impossible for this person to notice them here. Otherwise, everything could end very badly. So in order not to attract unnecessary attention to himself, Shumo simply covered the girl's side with his hand and asked to be quiet. In the next chapter, you can see how the guy still continues to hold the little girl, pressing her to him and covering her mouth so that she does not make unnecessary noise. You can see how they are hiding from a certain entity that flew near them at high speed. After waiting for this entity to leave, the black-haired one, making sure that the danger had passed, lets go of the white-haired girl's mouth and tells them it's time to start collecting. Chia Yan begins to clear her throat, and it feels like she felt disgusted by his hand. You can see how these two make their way through thick thickets of grass in search of a secret door. The black-haired one understands perfectly well where he is going and does not have any special problems on the way. He moves the grass aside and asks the white-haired one to pass right behind him. White-haired is surprised that they found one of the doors leading to another level in this kingdom. They are both very glad that this door has not been found by anyone other than them, and are already going to go inside to explore this place. The black-haired man reminds the little girl that all the doors in the secret kingdom are well hidden. This is the reason why members of different sects cannot find her for so long. Seeing that the girl is thinking about something, Shumo does not understand why she is frozen and asks to hurry up. Chia Yan is very surprised that someone even thought of putting a door in a place so hidden from prying eyes. She realizes that the creator of the kingdom, Yun Ling, must be damn slippery if he is capable of such complex machinations. Next, we see some guy sitting at his expensive computer and writing some code in a programming language. For some reason, Shumo was confused by the words of the white-haired woman, and especially the word slippery type. Because of her dissatisfaction, the main character even dared to hit Chia Yan. She shed tears in pain and simply could not expect such actions from her master. He asks her not to talk too much and watch her tongue. After that, the irritated main character opened the secret door and began to enter it, shouting to the white-haired one to hurry up too. The girl, somehow enduring the pain after the guy's click, still begins to slowly walk right behind him. Entering this door, they seem to find themselves in a desert. The main character is not at all surprised by this because he already knows how everything works here. But Chia Yan came here for the first time in her life, and with a very surprised face begins to examine the surroundings. In this place, apparently, strong winds are raging and raising sand particles into the air. Apparently some sand got into the eyes of a little girl. She, rubbing her eyes, asks the gentleman how they can find the door in such a place. Further, it may seem that Shumo discovered some kind of threat on the way, from which he suddenly decided to stop and evaluate the whole situation, so as not to expose his precious life to danger. It turns out that a real threat has appeared in front of them. It turned out to be a huge scolopendra, which is looking bloodthirsty at the main character with a little girl, and it seems that it is going to tear them into small pieces. The calm Shumo is already 100% sure that he can cope with this monster, and remembering that Chia Yan is next to him, he understands that this is the ideal moment for her practice, so he entrusts this monster to her, being confident in that she can handle it. Meanwhile, this monster is not wasting any time. It charges some violet energy in its mouth and is about to attack the main character with the white-haired girl, being confident in its abilities. This stupid creature, imagining these two to be easy prey, rushes at them without any hesitation. But two huge hands appear in front of him, which stop his attack since he crashed into them right like some kind of wall. It turned out that these hands were summoned by Chia Yan herself. She herself understands that this is a wonderful moment to show all her strength in front of Shumo. Turning to the monster, a serious-minded girl says that she will not allow him to get closer to her master. We again see the events that unfold around Lin Ye and Liu Ruoshui. Meanwhile, they are still wandering around the first floor of this secret kingdom and looking for something that might be useful for them. The blue-haired one thinks that they need to go ahead. The red-haired one does not understand why exactly there. The guy calmly tried to answer this girl's question, trying to explain to her that all his instincts were telling him. The red-haired one didn't even want to listen to him, and simply decided to hit the blue-haired one, which made him silent. Liu Ruoshu imagines herself to be right, and having interrupted the guy, took command upon herself. She says that the flower of the immortal grass must be somewhere nearby. Lin Ye can't understand where she got this information from. It turned out that she remembers this because of her past life with Shumo. She is going to tell her friend about this, but abruptly stops, because she is very unpleasant to remember her life with the main character. She curses herself, because she again remembered the main character. On her face at this moment you can see either sadness or anger. In any case, it is unpleasant for her to talk about Shumo. Perhaps she even realizes that she made a big mistake by finishing him off. Liu Ruoshui remembers how Shumo took the white-haired one from the shelter this time instead of her, and now thinks that the guy is probably being nice to this Chia Yan witch. It seems that the red-haired one is very jealous of her. It is clear from her tears that she is actually very sad about all this. Seeing her thoughtfulness and sadness, the blue-haired one comes up to her and wants to ask something. The red-haired one does not want him to see her tears, so she interrupts him and says that we need to go. They wandered through the forest for some time. Then suddenly, Liu Ruoshui notices something that surprises her very much. The guy who is barely catching up with her climbs up to her to see what is there. The two of them are watching some thick sprouts sticking right out of the ground. Seeing this, they realize that the flower of the immortal grass has already been plucked, which means that they were late, and someone else had already taken it. Then the events again move directly to Shumo with Chia Yan. We see how the white-haired woman sits near the dismembered body of a monster who attacked them some time ago. We can understand that she successfully dealt with him.